struggling, you know, and first hit your normal spots, and if they're not producing like you want them to, just look at the water. When you're a good fisherman, you have fishermen that are really good, have an innate ability to just look at the water and go on their instinct. Yeah, I didn't pull in here and catch a bunch of 5-pounders, but I could have used that fish in a tournament. Now that fish has got my confidence up a little bit. I'm trusting what I'm seeing on the water. So who knows, maybe now I pull out, find 3 or 4 other spots that look good to me like that where I normally don't fish, and I'll catch fish off them. Can turn a horrible day into a good day. Go with your instincts. Anytime that I'm shallow water cranking, whether that's on an estuary or tidal situation like we're fishing here on the upper bay, small ponds or lakes, or even on a reservoir early in the year when you're fishing up shallow. Now all these places I'm talking about are going to at least have slightly stained to dingy water. Anytime I'm throwing these shallow crankbaits, most important, I always want them to have a square bill. That's something we've talked about before. This one is a Lucky Craft RC 1.5. It runs about 2 to 3 feet deep. Want to use a 7-foot rod cranking stick. This is a graphite, but it has a little bit of flex to it, real fast action tip. That tip's important, gives you a forgiving action there when that fish is surging at the boat. I'm throwing 12-pound test. If the water's really clear, I'll go to a fluorocarbon. When the fish are really eating the bait, I'll go to a fluorocarbon because I like that it has that no stretch. But early in the year like this, when the water's a little cold and the fish are kind of just coming up and bumping the bait, I prefer that mono, has a little bit of give, just makes me set that hook a little bit slower. I don't pull the bait away from them. Always want to use a bait that has real sharp hooks, Daiichi hooks. If it doesn't, change them out yourself. I go with the gear ratio a little bit slower than your normal 6.3. This is a 5.1 to 1, but I don't prefer to go as slow down. Some guys throw those real slow 3.9 or 4.1 to 1. I prefer something a little quicker in case I do get a fish on, like that last fish was running at me really fast and I really need to pick up that line so she couldn't wrap me in the trolling motor. So I go with the 5.1 to 1. This is a Daiwa Millionaire, great reel. I prefer the round reels for my crankbaiting. Hold a longer spool, allow you to make a real long cast. That's just me. I know some guys that use the low profile reels. And that's pretty much it. I go with that 7-foot rod. That allows me to get power on these fish, lets me have a longer tip. On a 6-foot rod, I won't have as many inches of that soft, flexible tip that I want as I will on this 7-footer. Plus, I can throw that bait out a mile, which is very important. That's pretty much your setup. I throw 10 to 12-pound test. If the fish are really finicky, I might go to 8. If they're really aggressive and the water's really muddy, I might go up to 14. Unless I'm really breaking fish off, though, I prefer not to go any higher than that because it affects the action of the bait. I mean, if I'm breaking a ton of fish off, or they're really smashing the bait just any way you throw it in, then I might go a little heavier. But if you learn how to play them a little bit, set your drag, pull them away from the cover, you can eliminate a lot of that. Fish was in here against these rocks. Boy, there's a lot of stumps here. A little bit of a channel that runs along the shoreline. Thought that little Lucky Craft crankbait was a bait fish that are being pushed in here. Jumped on it. All it took. Everywhere that you've been where the cover is heavy, and you've said, man, this tree or this dock or this brush pile looks good, but we never catch anything on it, that's where they're hitting. They're not just hitting any random place where there's no cover. They're hitting in some of the trees. If you have any trees on your body of water where you always fish and say, man, I never catch anything here, and after a while you stop fishing them, but they look so good every time you're there. Just this spring, it's been funny. I don't know whether it's because of fishing pressure or, you know, what it is, but that seems to be where we're catching these fish.
I'll tell you when. Wait.
It's tough when you're hooked on a tree. Not always. I've caught them here before when they weren't.
Go ahead and tell them where we are, what we're doing, how the water moves.
You've got that on tape, don't you? There's supposed to be a Potomac tape, isn't it?
No.
Still on Sassafras. We made a run out here at the Lloyd's Creek. We're right on the mouth of Lloyd's Creek. It's out near the bay. You run all the way out of the Sassafras. See what happens here. It funnels down in the entrance of this creek, and the current funnels through here. If you look out to the side, you can see actually how hard the current's ripping. You want to position yourself on the slack side of this sand point here. Slow roll a spinnerbait, a rattle trap, or a crankbait in the eddy. Just hang on. Most of the time they're in here. It's a good staging area. Each year this sand point changes and erodes, and the eddy positions itself in different places. So each spring you kind of have to fish it a little bit and find out where they're holding. And a couple years ago they hit on the back side. That's where the eddy was. Now it appears that the eddy swung out a little bit. What happens is sometimes a tree will fall down or something happens and it changes the way that this water rips through here, and that changes the whole formation of the point down there. Then we have some laydowns over here on the shore, and that dock, you want to flip that dock with the tube, Ika tube, Yamamoto, tungsten weight. Then there's some shallow wood around the corner that you want to throw a shallow square lip crankbait. And all the way in the back is the tomato barge on those marsh reeds back there. Feels like a striper. Yep. Well, found the eddy. Found where the eddy is at this stage of the tide, but wrong species of fish there, and a little too small at that. What happens under the water here, secondary point is swinging out and ends right about a little bit closer to the boat than that cast. You just let the current wash it down, slow roll it right into that point, and that striper hit, right along this little shelf there.